All right, awesome. Well, thanks everyone. As we discussed today, we're looking at ECL sealed. I know some of you were keen to look into LCI, but that doesn't actually make any sense. So we'll focus on ECL today. So I've put together a little bit of a PowerPoint just to structure some of my thoughts. So I think just a little bit of a format overview today. So what we're going to be looking at, mostly going to be focused on sealed. So if there are any questions on draft, we can talk about those later. Or if you're locked for top 8, like come have a chat on site, and we can talk through some general draft strategy as well. When it comes to what we're looking at today, so it's sort of like a mix of data. So I've mostly looked at Arena Direct data on 17 lands. So there have been 3 Arena Directs for this format, so people have put a lot of games in, so I think there is some sort of useful data there. It's also just a mix of vibes as well. So if I say a card is like bad or unplayable or whatever, obviously it's sealed, you've got a pool in front of you, there are going to be times where that card is going to be good or is going to make your deck, but I think in general, if you just have that baseline of, oh, this card is actually bad, it has to fit into its key sort of strategy or archetype to be good, then that's just a solid piece of grounding. So just keep that in mind, particularly with any sort of language or terminology I use. So I'll go over the general approach to the format. What are a few sort of trends that you might want to pay attention to in deck building or that might be showing up in the gameplay? Then we'll take a look at what are the best rares in the set. So if you open one of these, you should really try your best to play it. And then look at some overrated rares. So maybe some cards that, when I first looked at them, I thought, wow, this card is probably going to be pretty good. And then the way the format's played out, they just haven't necessarily been that good. Same thing for underrated rares. There are some cards in there which you might not realize are strong pulls to certain colors. And then we'll take a little bit of a look at each of the tribes as well, as they're sort of a key pillar of the format, and it's not necessarily obvious when or why you should be in a certain tribe. All right. And obviously, if anyone has questions at any point, just please, let me know, and we can pause and chat through it a little bit more. But I'm sort of keen to just go through this from an approach of, obviously, you've all played Limited, you're all very good Magic players, you've all played a lot of Sealed, but you might not know the specifics of this format. All right. So, format overview. So obviously, this set, there are only 5 supported color pairs. That's a lot more relevant in draft than it is in sealed. So it's built around 5 different types. So you've got your goblins, your merfolk, your elementals, your elves, and your kithkin. That adds some really unique pressure to the format, and in particular in sealed. So basically what happens is you have all these cards, which in their typal deck, it's a 10 out of 10. It's a complete bomb. You really want to run it. It's probably better than most of the rares that you could open. But if you play it outside of that typal pair, it's going to be absolutely terrible. It's just going to be a 0. So that adds a lot of pressure to some ways that I know people like building sealed pools, where you just try and jam essentially all of the most powerful cards from your pool into a build. It's really challenging to do that in this format. And you'll see that with some of the pools that get opened. They're really polarized. So some of the decks basically build themselves. You open 3 merfolk rares, 2 merfolk uncommons. You've got really good blue and white cards. Slap it together. You'll literally finish building your pool in 5 minutes. You might have a couple of fringe choices to decide on. And then you'll have other pools that are just incredibly challenging, where you've got one good card in each of the tribes. You're super light on playables. You can't really stitch it together because none of the cards really work very well together on a splash. So those are the sort of pressures that you'll find in your pools. So we'll go over sort of the main decks to build. I think generally tribal decks are still the place to be. You're sort of less pushed into it than you are in draft, where in draft I think you really want to stick to the tribal decks unless you sort of get pushed out of them. So you've got a little bit more flexibility here, given you get to see all of your cards and all of your pools. That being said, looking at the 17 lands win rate data, two color pairs have the highest win rates. So that's pretty much across the board. The tribal pairs are really like where you want to be as well. The only exception is blue-red elementals. So the win rate on the blue-red deck actually goes up with a splash. So that's not true for any of the other color combos. So keep that in mind. They've got the tools to splash. Like they've got some treasure makers, some land cyclers, and their game plan sort of supports going long and going over the top in a way where you can get an advantage out of that splash as well. So that being said, there are still going to be some pools where you just want to splash a bunch of cards and play the most powerful cards in your pool, and we'll talk about when you might want to do that and what cards might pull you in that direction. All right, so that's a little bit about the format. Let's talk a little bit about the gameplay, because I think that really influences what cards you want to run in your deck as well. So the format can be incredibly grindy. You're often going to end up in lots of board stalls, and it's really hard to push through those board stalls. Honestly, like the games are a real grind. You're going to need to prompt your opponents to play quickly. You're going to need to play quickly yourself. Some games will come down to decking, or to a point where you will have to pay attention to how many cards are in your library and your opponent's library. That's mostly going to happen with green decks. So if you're playing like a green mirror, oftentimes it's really hard for them to punch through and end the game. So a viable strategy is actually boarding above 40 cards if you need to as well. So keep that in mind. Bring more than 40 sleeves and be ready for that if you put together a green deck. Next up, there are just fewer mana sinks in the format. It almost plays like a format from like 5-10 years ago, before they just stapled mana sinks kicker onto everything. Like, you know, there aren't clues. There's no mechanic where you just get to keep refueling and spending your mana every turn. There are going to be games where you literally just pass the turn. You untap, draw a land, pass the turn. Nothing else has happened. Same thing with your opponent. So you're going to need to value card draw or filtering a bit higher than you would in a normal format. And honestly, games will come down to you've drawn 2 fewer lands than your opponent, or you've managed to find a way to stitch your draw together a bit better than they have. A next key point is you can curve a little bit higher than normal in this format. So if you can progress the game to a point where you're in a board stall, you don't really need to have a 2-drop on curve. You can sort of start your curve at 3 in some games. Generally, you still want some 2-drops in your deck, but this isn't a format like, you know, if you played Avatar in the last format, if your opponent played any 2-drop and you didn't, you just felt very far behind. That's not the case here. You can really stabilize and end up in that board stall, but still play some 2-drops, but don't feel forced to play a color because you need the 2-drops. And cards which break a board stall are at a premium. So random flyers are super good. There are some other ways to push through a board stall, and they will be pools in your pool as well. So let's take a look at some of the different tribes and the different archetypes that you might end up playing in the format. So we'll kick off with Kithkin. So one of the big pulls to Kithkin is actually this Thoughtweft Imbuer. So it's a 0/5 for 4, but it's really, really good at punching through a board stall. And that's something that the Kithkin deck really struggles with usually. Basically, you can flood the board with a bunch of dudes, but it's really hard to finish the game. And Thoughtweft Imbuer basically converts each of your Kithkin into like a game-ending threat that has to start being chumped or can push through a bunch of damage. Particularly strong when you can pair it with evasion. Even trample creatures are quite good. So Thoughtweft Lieutenant, the white-green Kithkin guard, gives trample to a unit. So these two sort of pair really well together as well. Generally, I don't love playing Kithkin, but Thoughtweft Imbuer is a card that will pull me towards that archetype. All right, next up we've got Merfolk. So the Lord is quite a strong pull towards Merfolk. It's quite good in Sealed still, and Champion of the Shoal, so the blue Merfolk champion, is also very strong. It surprisingly has one of the top performing win rates in Sealed. I think it's something like a top 15 card. one thing that I'll note about the tribal decks as well is you really do need a critical mass. So like you might play some of the pieces or a package of cards, but don't feel like you're forced to play a tribe, if that makes sense. Like you want to play a tribe, but if you don't have the cards, like the tribal cards are still going to suck. So do what you can to support them. Changelings are a good way to sort of bridge some of that gap. But if you don't have the cards for it, like you are probably better off going in a different direction. All right. Goblins, so really similar story to draft. Like it's really hard to want to go down the goblin route. Generally, you need at least one rare, and your pool really needs to push you towards it. Grub's Command is a really good pull into goblins, but the card is just powerful on its own, and you could generally splash it in, a black or red deck. All the commands are just super powerful rares, so they will pull you in a direction. Notably as well, they can copy any of the changelings, right? And that's generally the most powerful mode, is being able to copy a creature and then get a really strong effect with it. So being able to, for 5 mana, basically make a Ravenous Chupacabra that destroys something is really powerful. It's worth splashing for. All right, next up we've got Elves. So Elves has a heap of Unreal Bombs. So Morkan's Eyes, for instance, is really, really good in draft. It's much harder to get the critical mass you need in sealed, so its win rate does drop off pretty hard. Same thing, honestly, with Morkan's Loyalist and a High Perfect Morkan. All these cards take a hit in sealed, because I think Elves is probably a deck where you really do want that critical mass, and you do need to be able to sort of mill yourself as you go. So Elves, I think, is the strongest archetype in draft. It's still really good in sealed. It's just kind of hard to have it come together. But if it does, definitely keep an eye out for these pieces and go for it. All right, next up we've got Elementals. So you've got a really good opportunity to splash when you play this archetype. You can go over the top of opponents with like fatties, like Kulrith Zealot is the best red common in the set. It's a really big pull towards this archetype. Flame Braider, just really nice ramp creature, also helps you on the splash. Explosive Prodigy, quite good as well. Obviously, you're already aiming to splash, so it's pretty easy to set up like a light, vivid sub-theme, even if you are only playing 2 colors with a light splash. But these are the sort of cards that if you open them in your pool, I'd be looking at, all right, can we make Elementals work here? All right, so the soup decks. So generally, you'll get pulled into these decks when you open a rare, which is in sort of a non-supported color type to get its full power. So the Elementals are a key example. Deceit, Wistfulness, and Vibrance are the best of those by good margin. Catharsis, so the red-white one, is actually pretty bad. I'd say it's not really a pull. It's probably a little bit of a trap. So keep that in mind, but Deceit, Wistfulness, Vibrance, really good. Airdo, really good. Obviously, it's really good in a white deck. You don't have to be able to flip it, but this is a kind of card that gets extra value from a soup deck because it is really strong on the other side. And then a card like Bree, which is a really strong engine on its own, but it's red-white, so it's sort of unsupported. You might want to splash it in an Elementals deck. Alternatively, it might be a pull towards a sort of soupy archetype. All right. Next up, let's talk about the best rares in the set. So if you open one of these in your pool, you probably just want to try and play it if you can. So like you'll see a lot of these cards as well. They're very similar to the best cards in draft. But a couple of these cards get a little bit of a pump for not being tribal. So, for instance, Curious Colossus, really good in any white deck. Same thing for Kindbinding. Same thing for Lockmare, Figure of Fable, Soul Immolation. You should really just try and play these colors. It doesn't matter which sort of archetype or tribe they're in. Then down the bottom, we've got the sort of highest win rate cards that do need tribal synergies to be successful. So Ashling's Command, really strong, really good way to break through a board stall, like dealing 2 damage to each creature your opponent controls is just really, really good. It's also an instant. All the modes on this one are excellent. Tristan's Command, same thing, like being able to return 2 permanents from your graveyard to your hand and destroying something is super good. The overrun effect can be really good. The 1 mana amulet that lets you name a creature type, and you can return a card with that creature type from your graveyard to your hand, represents an infinite value loop with Tristan's Command, because it can return the command, and then command can return the amulet to your hand as well. So keep an eye out for that in your pool, but that just gives your deck pretty much complete inevitability. So I'd be really happy to run both of those cards together. And you can sometimes justify running that amulet to rebuy a different command, like Ashling's Command, for instance. Then we have Gloom Ripper, so it's just an incredibly powerful elf rare in draft. It's also very good here in sealed. But if you open any of these cards, I would be trying my best to play them and to build around them where you can. So obviously the top row here, where you're not locked into a tribe, they're going to be a lot easier to play. But this bottom row are all very, very powerful if you can make them work. If you can
Simon,
build around Lockmare, like putting more counters on it, do it. It's great. Obviously, if you get any of these cards, any ways to rebuy them from the graveyard also go up in value. So the Gravedigger and Unbury are really good. Dundulin Weaver, returning permanents, is also quite strong. So keep an eye out for that. That can be a really good way to break through the fact that you do need card draw and you can run out of things to do by just being able to rebuy the best cards in your pool. All right. Next up, we'll talk about some underrated rares. So I think these cards are all really good, but it's not necessarily obvious that you'd want to run them in your deck. So first up, we've got Taster of Wares. So this reads like a goblin rare. When it enters, your opponent reveals X cards from their hand, where X is the number of goblins, and exiles one of those, and you get to pick which it is, and if it's an instant or a sorcery, you get to cast that card. So I know the instinct might be, oh, this is a card you want to run in goblins, but honestly, just run it in any black deck. It's a splashable card. It's so powerful on its own, and if you have any additional synergy with changelings, this card is just an absolute house. Next up, we've got Sig, Wandewine Wisdom. This card is just really strong. 2/2 unblockable. It can sometimes draw you cards. Even if you can't flip it, I would be trying really hard to play this card. It's very strong, breaks through board stalls, and if you can start flipping it, it gives creatures protection from every color until your next turn. So you basically get an invincible blocker. It's also really good against all of the aura enchantment-based removal in the format, as you can just make those essentially drop off and free your creature. So this card, very powerful, would try really hard to play it. Flitterwing Nuisance, this card is also really good. Basically, it lets you get chip damage through the air. It can help you draw a bunch of cards. You can also reset it with ways to blight. So if you have a way to get a -1/-1 counter on this again, you can just keep using it over and over again. Notably, the ability as well, it's whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, draw a card. So it's not just when Flitterwing Nuisance hits, it's when anything hits. So that's a key distinction, and I think sometimes if you haven't seen the card before, it's easy to miss that part of the text. Glenalendra's Answer, really strong, another card that's somewhat unassuming as well, but this is actually a top 15 card in the set on win rate. Basically, at worst, it's a counterspell on a 1/1 body for 4, so a flying Mystic Snake, which is quite good. There are a lot of cards, particularly in elementals, that have cast triggers as well, so you can sometimes snag actually like multiple fairies off the card, and at that point, it's just truly cooked. Ashling Rekindled, another card that is quite good in draft, but gets a pretty big bump in sealed. The reason being, like, it's just so important to be able to filter your draws, so flipping this back and forth can be really powerful, along with the additional mana that it can provide you with. All right, so those are the rares that I think are underrated, or that you might open in your pool and not immediately realize, wait, this is a really strong pull towards this color. How can I make these cards work? All right, but on the other end of the spectrum, we've got some overrated rares. So these are cards that when I first sort of saw the set or saw these cards, I thought, wow, these could be really powerful, but that's not really the way that they've played out. So some of these are still like fine to good, but you really shouldn't warp your pool towards playing them, and they're not huge pulls towards the color. So the first one is Champion of the Path. So this card basically just domes your opponent for a bunch of damage when you play an elemental. This card's not particularly good on the stats. I don't think you just want to jam it into a random deck. The place where it can be good, though, is there is a combo kill that you can set up. I can't remember the name of the card. Does anyone remember the name of the card that copies elementals? 4 mana, copy an elemental.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
You can't hear us. Yeah.
Oh, I can't hear anyone, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
it wasn't pre-recorded.
I can hear you now.
I thought it was pre-recorded also with you guys.
Yeah. We thought you were recorded because you weren't stopping when I tried to jump inside.
Oh, sorry, Vaughn. Yeah, no, I think my headset turned off because nobody had said anything for a while.
Kindle the Inner Flame?
Yes, Kindle the Inner Flame. Thanks, Jazza. Yeah. So yeah, there's a combo with Champion of the Path and Kindle the Inner Flame where you have the Champion of the Path in play, use Kindle the Inner Flame to copy Champion of the Path to make a second Champion of the Path. The first one triggers, shooting them for 7, and then you flash back the Kindle the Flame from your graveyard, copying a Champion of the Path, and then both of your other Champions of the Path trigger, and you get to deal 21 damage. So that's a combo kill, and like the only time that I would probably want to be playing Champion of the Path. I guess on that, welcome, Ivan. What were you saying before when I was cutting you off? Is there anything you want to
add? Can we go back a couple slides?
Yeah.
Before we, I just wanted to potentially, I think everything you're saying is totally. So agree with all the soup. Go to the best rares.
Yep.
I guess I want to stress the commands. They aren't tribal. They are great as splashes. You don't need elves or elementals for either of those commands to be cooked card. They get better if you also have some changelings or that creature type. But just didn't want people to pigeonhole that they had to build towards that tribe.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And yeah,
and even Gloom Ripper offlane a Goblins deck, if it can snipe an X1 or an X2, just because you've got 1 or 2 changelings, it's still playable. It's obvious. It's cooked in an elf deck. That's the
100%.
And then there was 3 other rares. We don't necessarily have to talk to them, but I wanted to flag Chronicle of Victory.
Yep.
I would put it on the same tier as the above. It does require a tribe to have probably 10 hits, but it's a pretty low bar. Nearly all pools can manage that, and it's been the reason for a lot of the trophy decks or a lot of the trophy losses. Senar is a kind of underrated rare. Is another one. It just warps the game very quickly if it's not immediately answered. That's the 4-drop 2/4 hybrid that functionally draws you 1 to 3 cards extra a turn. And the 1-drop L, if anyone hasn't played with the Blight L, the 1 mana 1/2 black guy that blights and that lets you cast things from your graveyard.
Dawnhand Dissident.
Oh, you talked about it? Good.
I fucking love this card. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to flag that these are also about rares you should be keeping an eye out, and I think underrated or big draws. I'll let you keep going though. I agree with everything you're saying about the overrated.
Yeah, awesome.
I got one little thing. If you guys find me Saturday while I'm there, I'm going to have a pile of draft nights in my bag. So if you scrub out, you can come see me if you want to crack packs to practice sealed pooling. I will have draft nights in my room or in my car or in my bag with me. So there will be groups of ECL boosters if you want to test building pools with the team and talking about it. I'll have those with me.
Nice. All right, awesome. Were there any other questions now that I know that people were talking? All right, we'll keep going then. All right, so back to the overrated rares. So next up we've got Tam. Whoop, spoiler alert, best uncommons. Next up we've got Tam, Mindful First Year. So each other creature you control has hexproof from each of its colors, and then you can tap it to give target creature you control, have it become all colors until end of turn. So basically it's a giver of runes, and you can protect your creatures. Notably, it's hexproof rather than protection, so it's a little bit more limited. The other good combo with Tam is that you give a creature all colors, which is obviously cooked with Vivid. This is just a 5-color Vivid enabler. So because of that, I think people tend to overrate this card. Notably, you can give Tam protection from all colors, but she doesn't get hexproof from her ability, so she normally just eats her removal spell and dies. She's still a good card. I'd still play her in my green and blue decks, but she's not really a pull into those colors. So just keep that in mind, because sort of when I first saw this card, I was like, wow, that seems great, but it's just good. Next up, we've got Spry and Mighty. So this is a card where you choose 2 creatures you control, draw X cards, and the chosen creatures get +X and gain trample, where X is the difference between the chosen creature's power. So the dream with this is obviously you draw like 4 to 5 cards, punch through a bunch of damage through a board stall. Generally, that's not really how it plays out. You just end up sort of still in a board stall, and the fail case is just too high. So sometimes you just don't really end up drawing enough cards to make it worthwhile. I thought this looked quite good when I saw it, but it just hasn't really played out that way. You can still play it, but it's not really a pull.
So yeah, I think I'd add to that
Yep.
if you're playing with this card, you are trying to set it up if it's in your hand. You are by baiting a move and playing for a game where you'll have a window to play it. And also, it shouldn't be in your deck unless you have some 1/2s and 0/4s, as well as some bigger stuff, so that the payoff when you can land it is there. Like most of the cheap creatures no one wants to kill, but you always run the risk when you're dropping your bigger stuff that they already are threatening a removal spell. So you're kind of having to play a game that's, even if they don't realize it, you're warping it to try and find that window to cast it. But if you do cast it, I've depressingly lost several of my box runs to
Yeah.
that
It's
card.
definitely a swingy
nothing else
card.
would do it, because trample is their biggest creature just got trample as well, and that can be a pain.
For sure. But yeah, you have to build towards it. You can't just jam it in a green deck and have it be good.
Definitely agree. I would see you playing at less than 50% of your green decks. Think about it.
Yeah, and really similar problems when it comes to the next card, so Sapling Nursery. Obviously, this card's cooked in Constructed. We've all played against it. It can really take over a game of Sealed. But the problem is it's such a big deck building restriction. You have to be heavy green. You sort of have to build around it and build towards it. And that's sort of reflected in the stats as well, where it's not really doing particularly well. Like Ivan said, I've lost a lot of games to this card, and it can be very good. But just keep in mind, you can't just jam it into a random deck, and there are real sort of costs to playing it as well. So it's not necessarily a pull to green, but can be a really good payoff. Next up, we've got Champion of the Klaken. So this is the Kithkin Champion. This card reads like it should be really good. It's a 4/5 for 4. It's got flash, so you can sometimes ambush and eat a creature. It's a Lord, so it buffs all your other Kithkin. The problem with it is it's just you don't necessarily eat something that often with the flash, because you often end up in board stalls pretty early, and the +1/+1 doesn't necessarily help you get out of them in this format. This is another card that I think looks like it should be quite good, but on the numbers and on the vibes, it's just a little bit weaker than it is, and it's not really a pull. Whereas if you open the green champion, the black champion, or the blue champion, those are huge pulls towards their colour. So just keep that in mind. The white and red champion, you'll still play them if you end up in that archetype, but they're not really pulls in that direction. Next up, we've got Reese, the Evermore. So, I mean, this card red to me is really good. It's just a flash 2/2 for 2. Target creature you control gains persist until end of turn, and then you can remove counters from creatures you control as well. This card just hasn't really been that good. It's just not really what the format's been about. It doesn't really fit in with any of the other sort of synergies as well. There are spots where you can use it, but I honestly just thought this would be a premium 2-drop, and that's not how it's played out at all. All right.
Yeah, I think you play it in your white decks, but it's like you would have to have a very weak pull to think that you want to splash it. Is the way I'd think about it. Like you sometimes will because it's still a flash surprise thing that can get you an edge, but it's
Are there any other rares you can think of, Ivan, that you want to add to this list?
No, it's much harder to think of overrated because I don't put them in my pools, so I don't remember them.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at some of the best uncommons that you can open in your pool as well. So to start with, the Eclipsed card. So I've just got Eclipsed Elf here, but this is for any of the Eclipsed creatures. These cards are just straight up bombs. These are the main payoffs to play tribal decks. Looking at the stats, they're like crushing a heap of the rares in the format as well. These cards are excellent. These are usually the main sort of reason that you want to play a tribal deck. Another advantage to them is digging 4 cards towards your tribal bomb is also huge. It just means you're going to see your bombs more often than your opponents. So for instance, like this finds your command, this finds your Morkan size, it can find some of the best cards in your pool, and having that extra consistency and card advantage is huge, especially if you get a way to rebuy the Eclipsed creature as well. So obviously that's easiest to do with Eclipsed Elf because you've got, your Gravediggers in black and your Elf Lord rebuys an elf when it dies. So just definitely keep that in mind. Next up, we've got Gathering Stone. So this card, the first time I saw it, I just didn't properly read it. This sort of like 4-mana artifact in most limited sets would just be stone unplayable. But in this format, it's actually quite good. Obviously, you need your deck to support it as well. So I think Ivan was talking about the Chronicle of Victory earlier and wanting 10 creatures of a type. That's probably a pretty good baseline for Gathering Stone as well. But essentially, when it enters, it basically gives you a Surveil, and if you see a card of the chosen type, you get to put that into your hand. Otherwise, you can leave it on top, put it in the graveyard, and then you get that again at the start of each of your upkeeps. It also discounts the cost of creatures of that type. So that's generally irrelevant in most of the archetypes, but in elementals, that's actually really, really key and can let you play multiple spells in a turn, especially as elementals is probably one of the decks which is better at just making sure you've got more cards in your hand and you have more spells to cast. Like a lot of the time when you're playing elves or Kithkin or merfolk, you're kind of out of cards already anyway. So you might hit one spell, like one cheapish spell off the Gathering Stone, draw another spell for the turn. You probably could have played those both already anyway. But yeah, if you have a Gathering Stone in your pool, definitely see if you can support it. It answers sort of a lot of those key format questions that we were talking about earlier. Next up, we've got Deep Channel Duelist. So this Lord is just really strong in the Merfolk deck. Still really good in Sealed. Merfolk is probably the best sort of tempo-y aggressive archetype in Sealed. I'd probably rather end up there than in Kithkin. And the Deep Channel Duelist just powers up that deck so much. And then to close this out, we've got Shine Striker as well. So this is the best Vivid payoff. It's really good in just an Elementals deck. You probably play it in all of your soupy decks. Obviously, all your Elementals decks. It's really easy to draw like 3 to 4 cards off this, even if you're just a 2-color deck, particularly by playing cards with the hybrid mana cost. So, for instance, in blue-red elementals, probably the most common way to get black mana would be Mischievous Sneakling, which is 1 hybrid blue-black for a 2/2 flash changeling. So this card is just super strong. It's pretty easy to build around in your games as well. Just keep it in mind if it's in your deck. Like, don't trade off your hybrid mana cards, or think about it when you've got a choice to trade off between, for instance, like a red or a blue 3-drop that are mostly like equivalent on the board or whatever. Like, trade off the blue one, because if you draw your Shine Striker will give you the blue if you don't have another way to get the red. So these are sort of some of the uncommons that might pull you a certain direction in the format. Avan, any you want to add to that one?
Give me a sec. I'm pulling up a set list so I can. So you keep going for now, and
Yep.
if I'll out of sequence if there's anything to
All
add.
right. So the other thing I wanted to touch on a little bit is some of the fixing in the format. So I've put together a slide on some of sort of what I consider the good fixing in the format. So the cards that if they're in my pool, I'm pretty happy with them, and I'm sort of keen to see if they can help facilitate a splash. So Changeling Wayfinder, it's Shapeshifter, it gets you a land. It's not amazing, but I'm pretty happy running it. It just ticks enough boxes that I'm happy to play it, especially if I want to splash. Foraging Wickamore, this is really good to enable the soupy sort of deck, especially because they often have a lot of vivid payoffs, and this can help you a lot there. Evolving Wild's quite important as well, because we don't have any dual lands unless you get really unlucky and open them in your rare slot with some shock lands. There's a bunch of green fixing in the set as well. Some of it can be playable, but there are a lot of pieces that I really think you should avoid. For instance, Tend the Sprigs. So this is one of the lowest performing win rate cards on 17 lands. So search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Then if you control 7 or more lands and/or tree folk, create a 3/4 tree folk creature. It's just not good enough. It's just not really what you want to be doing. Prismatic Undercurrent, I think, also has a really, really bad win rate and is one that you might think is okay for the splash, but you just don't want to be playing it. Prismatic Undercurrents. Shimmerwild's Growth is another one that looks like it should be solid, but just doesn't quite do it. Undercurrents is the Vivid. You get to search your library for lands equal to your Vivid number, and then you can play an extra land each turn. So there are some formats where this would be like a fine fixer and ramper, but this just isn't one of them. This isn't really good fixing. I wouldn't really be playing this unless you have a really good reason to, or if you went really soupy, but don't think this is a good card. Same with Shimmerwild's Growth. It's okay. You can definitely play it, but I'm not. I avoid playing this card where I can. This isn't a pool. This isn't good fixing. This doesn't make you want to play a soup deck.
Can I explain some of the background? The reason for that this time around is that ramp doesn't matter because the games are going to go long anyway. So getting the edge on mana isn't that of a much of a swing. And so you want your cards that can help you fix to be relevant pieces of cardboard. Whether it's there's lots of opportunities by having a creature in play. And even above and beyond those cards, sometimes you'll play the artifact because it's got a creature type, so if creature types matters for some of your cards, and it can be a 4/4 in a pinch. Again, I'm not saying that 3-drop artifact's good, but I would still put it it's at least doing some of those things of being a card that can trade or do something for you later on, because the format's slow enough that you don't need the actual speed associated with these ramp. Fiendish Claw there.
No, that's a really good point, right? Because it's what are you ramping to? You're ramping to still be stuck in a board store. So it's it doesn't really help you.
There are a couple of uncommons that are probably a tier below what you just talked about, but I think are worth mentioning for the group. Just to have on their radar. If you're heavy white or black, Reaping Willow is just like this format. If you're not playing blue, and to a lesser extent black, you're needing ways of having card advantage or card filtering, because you both see a lot of cards. Reaping Willow is a good creature in terms of being able to rebuy something, and being a 3/6 lifelinking body is really valuable. And black has lots of ways of bringing back a creature, whether it's the Gravedigger effect, it's Unbury, and so you can often set up a lot of grind. So but it is a deck building cost, especially if you're only white or black. You should only really play it if you're leaning heavily. Hovel Hurler.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Ivan. Just to add to Reaping Willow before we go off that one, I think Reaping Willow as well. If you have really good 3-drops to return, if you have a Taster of Wares, if you have a Figure of Fable or something like that, this card shoots up in value as well. So definitely keep that in mind. This gets a force multiplier when you're returning really good cards. But even if you're not returning really good cards, like Ivan said, it fills a real key role in the format. All right, on to Hovel Hurler.
Hovel Hurler more because this is a way of breaking your board stall while growing itself bigger, and because there are quite a few ways of blighting onto your cards to make this quite a recurring piece. I guess that's the same with the tree. Blight can be an advantage in some of these board stalls when you've got these pieces that could remove counters. I don't need to go into it more. What was the other couple that I wanted to...
Of note on Hovel Hurler as well, it's actually doing really quite poorly on the stats as well. So I think it's sort of one that you can't necessarily just jam into any deck as well. So just keep
there's a lot of
5-drops.
Well. That's the cost.
Yeah.
Better than Hovel Hurler. If you haven't talked, were you going to do commons later? Should I wait on?
No, go for it. I ran out of time on the slide, so I don't have much after this.
Okay. But in the sense of you want all of everything as a form of mid-range. So you want ways of... Kulrath Zealot is the red 6-drop is good enough to be splashable.
Yeah.
It is 6/5 is a good size, and it's the kind of card advantage, it's setting you up because it's on board plus card advantage.
It's also a fixer in a pinch, but you generally will want to play it rather than using it to land cycle.
I will say, though, depending on how your deck's built, you can, if you've got 2 or 3 of your elemental land cycles, go to... It depends on curve and things, but you can be 16 land. I guess I want to reiterate things like Unbury as really important draws to play the Merfolk that bounces, 3-drop bounce, because this can bounce your own permanents. Creature, not permanent, but it can reset something that's been Blossom Binding.
This card's excellent, and it's an elemental.
But often consider in the games, if you're already getting towards board stall, you're going to get more value by bouncing something of yours, unless it's helping you push damage in a real way. Omni Changeling is just it's a deceptively powerful clone this time around. Being able to convoke so that you can double spell on turn 5 while copying the best thing on board, and having then all creature types.
This card's quite good, and it also combos with all the commands as well, because you can copy anything with this, and then it'll still be a changeling, and you can copy whatever that is with the Merfolk command or the Elemental command. So keep that in mind as well. If you have a command and Omni Changeling, that can be a powerful combination.
Yeah, I think the only 2 I just wanted to mention, Klatchin Festival, if you're in white, it does just slowly threaten a very long game. And especially if you've got triggers or uses for the bodies, but I'd play it without much synergy if I'm just in white.
Fully agree. This can just take over a game. You can act the board stalls are so ridiculous, there are games that like a player will win by activating twice a turn until they've got a big enough board to like swing in for lethal.
But this is where you need to be aware to try and not let games go to board stalls, because if it turns out your opponent has a kin binding or they have the Ashling's command or something, like, you still don't get complacent and think that you can act. Like, just remember there are bombs that swing things. Don't leave yourself dead to it. If you're seeing a deck that's, a blue deck splashing red, I would be thinking, do they have the command, the Ashling command? If you see a green deck splashing black, I would definitely be thinking elf command, and just realize that your late game might be worse than theirs. So you kind of almost have to guess from their splashes what role you should be playing. The last one that is probably one of the best removal spells because of the types of bombs in this format, Pyrrhic Strike. I just really, being able to 2-for-1 when needed, while answering any of the most problematic permanents, whether it's the Chronicle of Victory, whether it's the whatever very expensive elemental that's been cast, then that flexibility is good. And I guess on a related note, don't get blown out by Protective Response when no one has any mana untapped, because this is a free removal spell if they have creatures.
Yeah.
And the number of people like this the number of people that do get blown out people with this so many times, because we're so used to they're tapped out, shields down, I can go for my risky combat trick or alpha swing.
Yeah, definitely a good one to keep in mind.
And actually, last on Blossoming Defense, just to know that it exists in the format, and it is quite good, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be good. I think it's a little bit weaker in the format just because I think removal is a little bit worse in this format. You still need some removal, but if you just build a deck which has a heap of removal in it, that's not really a recipe for success here. So Blossom. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was going to say, I think what it does well is that a lot of the green decks, if you're not a soup green deck, if you're doing something with some elves or Kithkin, you're trying to be a little on the proactive end. You're still mid-range, but you're playing creatures to try and win the game and accrue advantage, like on board, and that often gives you that mana advantage or a tempo swing. Like I was going to say, I don't think aggro exists in sealed, but you don't want to be playing bad 2-drops just for the sake of having 2-drops.
Yeah.
But one of my most aggressive decks that trophied in one of the arena directs was a deck that had 3 creatures at 1 and 2, but it had a lot of 3s and 4s that were on-board tempo swings. That meant that I could quickly turn a corner and still get it, because a lot of people's decks are still playing slower. If you can generate that onboard advantage, then you can then build on with the removal spells. I wouldn't be trying to build a traditional aggro deck, I guess kind of, unless the stars align with your draft deck of Kithkin or something.
Yeah, fully agree.
I would lean more towards how do you mitigate games where you're going to blood or go late, and make sure you've still got card quality and card advantage to keep up.
Yeah, fully agree. All right. So, last slide. So, final notes. So, one thing that I think is really interesting in this sealed format is because you have a combination of these cards where you might have some tribal synergies or pockets of cards that work really well together. When you're building your deck, you might find you actually have multiple viable decks that you can put together. So I think this is actually a format where you can just sideboard into a brand new deck probably at a higher instance than you could in other formats where you would probably just be putting a worse deck together. You might have a deck that's like really similar in power level, but wow, it's really good on the play and really good against what your opponent showed you in the last deck. So I'd say keep that in mind. The hybrid mana cards are sort of easier to slot into multiple decks as well. So for instance, you might have some of the colorless cards like Rooftop Percher, and then you might have like a Noggle Robber, which is the red-green hybrid card. And obviously, if you bought into a completely different deck, those cards can go along into the new one. So you might only need to sideboard out a few cards.
Simon, your Percher comment makes me realise, if you haven't covered it, nearly all of the changelings, even at common, because you're needing to hit some creature type matters synergies, or vivid synergies, like they are all pretty playable to good. And Rooftop Percher is just good. I wouldn't be cutting many of those from
Rooftop Percher is a really good card. On the changelings, though, I think you can trick yourself. Like some of them, I think are quite bad. Like I wouldn't be playing Chomping Changeling if you can avoid it. I wouldn't be playing Feisty Speak.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'd agree with those two.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but the 3-drop ones, the 2/3 with lifelink, the 4/2 with trample, the 3/4 reach, 3/4 with reach slightly less good because 4 drops you've got a glut, but
yeah, they definitely fill a role, and it can be hard to actually hit the playable count sometimes with these decks. So,
I realised that there was one more common before we finish your thing that people should be aware of because it's better than it's been in many previous formats, and that's Guiltleaf Embrace.
Yep, that's a good one.
As a combat trick that you probably wouldn't think to put in your deck at all. It was a bit down. It's still at 55%, but I think it's partly down because people are so awful at playing it.
So yeah, I think the other part of this as well is Trample can be quite valuable, and there aren't really good combat tricks it's competing with in this format. But yeah, this is a perfectly playable card, where in a lot of formats it would be completely unplayable. So yeah, good one to shout out.
Like if they're making a weird attack, like this is more also for when you're deciding on blocks. This is one of the first cards I'll be thinking that they might be representing.
Yeah, for sure. And then final note, like crush them, win the tournament. I want to see 8 of us in. Oh, it's top 16 cut even. I want to see 16 of us there in the final draft. All right, cool.
And also post your pools. Sure, you can't. Your game one, you're locked in, but I'm happy to, if I have moments through the day, have a look and suggest any changes.
Awesome.
That depends. If you want the team to knowing that you'll be all at the top tables by the end of it.
Yeah, true. Too many team kills. Yeah, hopefully.
Maybe too many people be playing top 8 and can't play.
That's very true. That actually, yeah, none of the team will be playing Sunday because they will be in top 8, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
I think Simon's going to drop from top 8 to play this, so...
Simon's just going to come 9th.
That's still a PT
get invite
right?
and get to play limited. Yeah, exactly.
That sounds alright. Yeah, I'd be into that. Alright.
Thank you, Simon.
Pretty much everything I got. Yeah. No worries. Yeah, any questions?
What do you think of the counterspell at Sealed?
I think it's good. Like, I think I would probably play one, but I probably don't want to run multiples.
So no, definitely from Sealed format to Sealed format, there's been a bunch where like cards like that are significantly stronger Sealed to draft.
Yeah, they definitely are.
Yeah, I'd agree with Simon. It's slightly deck dependent. If you're low on removal but know you need to have interaction, you're high on flash cards, like you've got your unexpected assistances or other things that could be used proactively. Like the fact that there's a counterspell mode for 2 mana is good flexibility in this card. So I'd deck dependent. If you're a tap out deck, you could probably get away with not playing it. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with it in a blue deck.
So I guess my impression was that all these games are like rare defined. They're like countering like their one big card can be like very game defined. Sealed.
It definitely is, but also you'll have your own rares. And
Yeah, I agree.
if playing towards your card advantage and synergies. Like, I wouldn't be trying to play blue because of having the counter spells in the pool.
Yeah.
Is I don't think you need to be walking that way. Blue is often one of the best colors. A lot of my trophy decks have been blue-based decks, but not all.
Blue gets a big bump in the stats here as well compared to how it's doing in draft, and that's not based on tribal cards either. That's just like the generic blue cards just get a bump, and I think that's generally because it's good at what's important in the format, right? Like, it generates card advantage, you've got flyers, it breaks through board stalls, like, it just does a lot of the things that the other colours struggle with.
Yeah, I guess because this is a format where I've played a lot more draft than sealed, which is often been the other way around. But are there any other like big differences you would say between?
Well, yeah, your curve, mate. You're going to play more 4s and 5s and 6s than you're normally comfortable with.
Yeah.
And that is also why the land cyclers can be good, because if you're hitting the lands, they're great. You'll cast them as cards, the blue and the red one. And otherwise, they help make sure you can cast your 4s and 5s and stuff.
Another card. Oh, sorry, I'll let you finish, Ivan.
I was just going to say, I'm scrolling through some of those trophy decks, and we're talking like I'm playing 7 or in several of these, I'm playing 7 or more 5-drops or higher. Like,
yeah, okay.
How many of your trophy decks have you posted in here?
I keep posting them in a different chat. I can just start copying them over.
It would be useful to have a look at that.
Yeah, I'll post some trophy decks.
That conversation's just reminded me as well. JLS, like, one card that I think gets a really big bump in sealed as well is Winnowing. So in draft, this card is pretty much unplayable. Like, but I think in sealed, it does actually get some value, and it can be really good. A lot of that is because people are playing this card a bunch. They're playing the Foraging Wickamore, which is just a scarecrow, so it's like a lot easier to wrath people's boards or for them to have like a random creature type in play, so you actually do just get to sort of plague win them. The card's still not amazing, but definitely keep that in mind that it is way better in sealed.
Do you still see it more as a sideboard card, or would you main it like some percentage of the time?
I would main it if I had the right deck.
Yes.
The other thing to keep...
But also be ready to side it out. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely be ready to side it out, but like, people just can't get, 20 or 18 of the same creature type like they do consistently in draft, so this gets a big bump. The other thing I'd say for people who haven't played with this card before, the way this works is you choose a creature they control, you don't choose a creature type. So just keep in mind, a lot of the creatures have multiple types, so they might play like a giant, for instance, and you'll pick that as the card you want to hit, but it's also a giant wizard, and because it's a wizard, like 2 other creatures on their board survive. So just keep that in mind when you're playing this card. Look at all the types. You don't get to like name one of the types that creature has.
I guess this is probably another just common card to be aware of that should almost be in your list of overperformers. The green 4-drop, the elf that can only be blocked by 1 creature and can pump elves, like, that is a house. It can't really trade in combat because there's never double blocks. You always threaten a pump, so it has to eat a removal spell.
and lost to that
And it can often enable some really good other attacks. So I'm just being aware, if you have multiple of those, that can be part of your mid-range green trying to be proactive plan.
Yeah, you'll just play this if you're green. Yeah.
Yeah, you play it if you're green, and like it can make mediocre decks win a bit more.
They're like treasure making elemental as well.
Yep.
Yeah, card's very good.
I love that for enabling the splash too.
For Sion, especially, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, if there are no more questions, that's all I got. Thank you, everyone.
How many things do you think you need to play a champion in your seal deck?
I think like 8 to 10 is the minimum, and I think it depends on how good the champion is, right? So it's like champion of the perfect. So that's the green one that draws you a card whenever you cast a creature spell. That card's obviously great. Like, that's not an elf card, right? That's a card that you need elves to be able to cast, but then it's great in any deck. So the bar on that is probably lower. Like, I'll look to play that where I can. But if it's something like the Kithkin Lord or the Elemental Lord, like, you really need...
I'm not interested.
Yeah, I'm just not super interested, but yeah.
On that, at least in draft, I wouldn't even play the elemental one in like half my elemental decks.
Yep.
Yeah,
No,
I was going to say 7 or 8. Having that where you're on the borderline, that could be the reason that you might play the 3 mana rock. Like, just to, especially if you're splashing and you're like, well, I want an extra way of potentially, whatever, hitting my champion. Yeah.
Of note as well.
One of the ones I'm thinking about is like Champion of the Weird in particular. Feels like the one you might be shortest on in terms of cards you want to play to support.
Well, it's hardest because unless you're goblins, there aren't that many. You're really leaning on changelings because goblins they aren't generically good, whereas a lot of elementals and elves and stuff are pretty happy just playing.
Yeah. Another point on the champion mechanic as well. If you can champion away an eclipsed creature, like, that's ridiculous, right? Because if they ever deal with your champion, you get the eclipsed creature back. Same with, like, Grave Shifter can be a really powerful one to champion. It's all creature types, but if they kill your champion, you can just rebuy it because you've got the Grave Shifter back. So keep that in mind as a potential value loop as well.
2 more cards to draw
creature as well.
What was that? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, I was just saying that, like, if they put a pacifism on your creature as well.
Yep.
So that to the champion is also very strong.
Yeah, pretty nice.
Yeah, I was going to say 2 other cards. There's the common blue-white hybrid Convoke Merfolk. It's got flying. Keyword flying is great. Like, you want it in any blue or white deck. It doesn't matter about synergies. Like, it's the kind of thing that either blocks their flyers or gives you some clock and game. The other is because of all the blight and because of champions, Noggle the... What's the Noggle thing called?
Noggle
that turns something into a 1/1. It's the best that effect's ever been because it will just snap kill a lot of some of the powerful creatures that blood onto themselves, like that tree, that you'd remove things. And it can also, if you hit a champion, they lose their card for good. When it dies. So like that it's actually a pretty premium removal spell.
Yeah, and if they have champions as well, you've just reminded me of like you want to board in counter spells for those because they champion as part of the cost when they cast the card, but they only get the card back when the champion dies. So if you counter the champion, you just immediately 2-for-1 them. All right, cool. But yeah, good luck in the 20, everyone. I reckon this will be fun. Hopefully we can do well. There are more than 8 of us here, so it can't all be in top 8 of Saturday.
Top 16.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
thanks,
thanks,
Simon.
Simon, for also preparing a slideshow. That
Yeah,
was,
no worries. No, thanks a lot. Glad you could make it
I
as well.
definitely thought it was a pre-recorded lecture. It really felt like that.
It was very high quality.
Thank
you.
Like legitimate,
Thank
it's
you.
like is Simon just not answering us because he just recorded.